So by the end of this video, you will have your very own AI-powered stock picking analyst, and we're going to build this out step by step together in n8n. So first step, if we take a step back and look at this very high level, right here I've built out a wireframe for this AI automation that we are about to build. And basically how this is going to work is that we are going to start with a stock pitch. We're going to add this stock pitch to Google Drive, and that is what will trigger our n8n AI automation. Our automation will download this file, extract the individual pitches within this document. So I'm thinking in my head that this document will have multiple stock pitches in it, and we'll want to extract those pitches individually and feed them into an OpenAI model. And then within that model's system prompt is where the real magic happens, in which we're going to prompt it to evaluate each stock pitch in a very specific way. And really during this OpenAI step is where the evaluation will occur. And then after that step, we're going to want to extract that output and then add it to a Google Sheet along with the full text of the stock pitch in case we want to read it in the Google Sheet. And then since the stock pitch document might have lots and lots of different stock pitches, possibly over 100 stock pitches, we might want to run this through batches in which we will loop through these batches one at a time so that we don't max out our API limits. So now let's jump into n8n and start building out this workflow. So we're going to start out with a Google Drive trigger. We're going to choose the on changes involving a specific folder. Now, I already have a credential set up, but what we'll want to do now is we'll want to create our new credential. And for this, what we'll need is a client ID and a client secret. So in order to get this started, we'll want to go to the Google Cloud Console. We're going to look up the Google Drive API, and then we're going to click Enable. We're going to scroll down to Credentials, and we're basically just going to create a new credential. So we're going to create credentials. We're going to do an OAuth client ID. We're going to configure our consent screen, get started. We're going to just type in n8n. For the audience, we're going to click on External. And then for contact information, I'm just going to use the same exact email that I'm using for this API setup. And then we can click Finish. Now click Create. So we're not done yet. We're going to click on Audience, and we're going to add ourselves as a test user. So we're going to scroll down and add a test user. And again, I'm just going to add in the same exact email that we've been using for this entire project. And once we've done that, finally, all we have to do is go into Clients. We're going to create a new client. We're going to click Web Application. And then for the name, we're just going to call this Demo once again. And then what we will have to do is add a redirect URI. So if you actually go back into n8n, we should have a URI right here. So we can click to copy, go back to the Google Cloud Console, add in that URI right here, and then click Create. So this should give you the client ID and the client secret, which we will need. As you can see, we need the client ID here and the client secret. We're just going to go back and copy those two right now. So client ID copied. We're going to paste that in. Next up on the list, client secret, back into n8n. We'll add that in, and then we'll click Sign In. Credential was successfully created. And now all we need to do is just sign in with that email that we've used. Click Continue, and then we're going to give n8n access. So you can see connection was successful. And now I'm just going to type in the email that I used just so I don't forget. And boom, we've created a new credential. Now the next step is that we will want to create this folder in our Google Drive. So make sure to go to your Google Drive, use the same email that we just used to create this credential. So I'm creating a folder called Stock Pitches. So I just created a folder called Stock Pitches, and this is the folder that we are going to watch with n8n. And whenever there's a new file that's been added to this folder, it will trigger the workflow. So now that we've created that folder, let's add that folder inside of n8n. And then we're going to watch for when a file is created. Now, the next step that we're going to do is we're actually going to move over to ChatGPT and generate some mock stock pitch data. So I asked ChatGPT to just generate 3 detailed and long stock pitches on NVIDIA, Apple, and Microsoft. So it went through and created these stock pitches. They look pretty good. So now what I'm going to do is just copy them over to Pages. because I'm using Mac. And now what we're going to do is we're going to add a little tagline phrase that we can use as a separator. And what this will allow us to do is be able to separate each stock pitch individually based on where this separator line is located. So what we'll do is we'll add a separator right before NVIDIA. So I've come up with this one right here. So it's pretty easy and unique to spot. So it's just basically new pitch surrounded by equal signs. So what we're going to do is we're going to add this separator in between each stock pitch. And there you go. We have a separator between each stock pitch. And now we're going to export this as a text file and just keep it very simple. So we'll call this stock pitch test. That way we're feeding n8n a text file. Now let's move over to Google Drive. And now let's add this file in. So that file has been created in our Google Drive account. And now what we can do is we can execute this workflow. You can see that the workflow has executed successfully, and it should pull that file that we just added. And as you can see, the original file name, stock pitch test, stockpitchtest.txt. So it did pull that file that we just added to Google Drive. And now what I want to do is click this pin data button in the top right, so we can pin this data and not have to execute it every time. So the next thing we'll want to do is add a Google Drive download node. So we're going to download this file. And instead of from list, we're going to choose by ID. And then in the top left under our Google Drive output, we're going to find the ID for that file. And typically it's going to be the ID that is not nested within other objects. So we're going to pull this one right here. It should be json.id. There it is. And the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to add an option to put the output file in a field. We're going to just call this data for now, and we'll go ahead and execute that step. And now we have a binary file called data, and we can click view right here, and we should be able to see the pitch. We can also download it and see that original file, which is stockpitch.txt. And it should just be a text file that has all of the text data from those stock pitches. Now, the next step is that we are still working with the binary file. So we'll want to extract the text from this binary file. So we're going to add a extract from file node, which will convert binary data to JSON. Now, since we're working with a text file, we're going to use extract from text. Our input binary field will be data, which matches up with the binary file that we're going to extract from. And then our destination output field, just for clarity, is going to be called full text, because basically this is going to be the full text of the stock pitch document. Now let's go ahead and click execute step. And there we go. We should now have JSON with the entire text. The problem though is that we still have one item that has all of the stock pitches put together. And what we want to do is separate all of those stock pitches so that they can individually be run through OpenAI. Now, in order to separate them out, we are going to use a custom code node, which allows us to run custom JavaScript or Python code. So we're going to go ahead and add this in there. We're going to keep this as run once for all items. We're going to keep it at JavaScript. And then in our JavaScript field, we're going to replace this all with this code right here. And basically what this code is doing is it's grabbing the full text that we had just spit out earlier from that extract from file node, and then it's creating a new variable called pitches, which is basically the full text variable split by our separator, which is the new pitch separator that we had added into the file. So it's basically just chunking that full text variable into individual pitches. And then in the bottom, it's returning pitches in the form of a JSON object so we can actually run each pitch individually through OpenAI. And then it's also removing extra spaces or line breaks and skipping any empty entries. So after this step, we should have multiple outputs. So let's just go ahead and execute this. And what we'll find is that we now have 3 outputs, right? We had 3 pitches that we originally had put into this text file, and now we have 3 different outputs. And just to check, let's look at the output. So we have pitch NVIDIA. Let's scroll down. We have pitch Apple, so it separated them correctly. And then the last one, pitch Microsoft. Okay, so it looks great. And then there's no more. So we got 3 outputs. Great, good to go. Now we're in a good spot to move on to the AI step. But actually, before we move on to that step, we're going to add a loop over items step. It might not be necessary in this instance where we're only passing through 3 items, but in cases where we have 100 stock pitches that we're feeding into OpenAI instead of feeding all 100 at once, which could potentially put us over API rate limits. What we'll want to do instead is loop over items in batches. So the next step is to add a node, which allows us to loop over items split into batches. So right now our batch size is 1. Realistically, I would put it to 5 or 10. For this example, just to show how it would work, we're going to put it to 2 so that it will only send 2 stock pitches through the OpenAI step at a time. So when we're finally done with this whole thing, it should loop through twice. So now we will have this replace me node right here. So we're going to get rid of that. We'll replace it with something else. So we're going to add in an OpenAI step right here. We're going to message an assistant. So I already have a credential set up, but in order to set up a credential, we will want to go to OpenAI's API platform. In the top right, click dashboard, go to API keys, and we will want to create a new secret key. So we'll call this n8n stock pitch. We'll go ahead and create that secret key. We'll copy that. We'll go ahead and create a new credential, and we'll just go ahead and paste that API key in here. Make sure to add in just the email that you're using so that you can remember exactly what account you're setting this up with. Save that. Credential successfully created. And one thing that you should know is that in order to use OpenAI's models through APIs, you will have to add your payment details and add a few credits to run these models. I'm going to use a credential that I know has some credits in there. And next, let's go ahead and customize this node. So resource, we're going to be using text. The operation, we're going to message a model. Now, the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to pick a model. So there's lots of options that you can choose from. GPT-4 Turbo is a pretty solid choice. And if you run about 100 stock pitches, that will cost you about $3. GPT 3.5 is going to be the cheaper, more affordable option. So 100 stock pitches there would be around 16 cents. Those are the rough estimates. Both of these models are pretty good with reasoning. So I'm going to go just with GPT-4 Turbo for this demo. And then this is where things get interesting. We're going to have both a user and a system prompt here. So we'll change this one to system. And basically what we're going to tell the model to do is to be a world-class value investor. So I'm going to switch this to expression. We'll go full screen. So in the system prompt, this is the prompt that I have drafted up quickly. So it's just telling the model that you are a world-class value investor tasked to evaluate a stock pitch. So that's the role. And then the context that we're going to provide is we're going to say that, you prioritize low valuations for your investments. You should consider valuation, growth, predictability of operating results, durability of the business, and quality of the management team in your analysis. Prioritize strong capital allocation and consider the degree of speculation in your analysis. And then we gave it some instructions. We said you will receive a stock pitch, return structured JSON output based on the stock pitch. And we'll get to exactly what is included in that JSON output. But we've told it to evaluate the company based on valuation, predictability, durability, capital allocation, management quality. And then final notes, we're just saying, make sure to be critical in your analysis. So that is the system prompt. Moving on to the user prompt, we'll click expression, go full screen, and this is what I've created right here. So evaluate the following stock pitch and return your analysis as a JSON object with these fields. So it's going to include company name, the name of the company, the ticker, the stock ticker symbol, a summary, so a short summary of the stock pitch, 2 to 3 sentences, and an overall evaluation. So this is going to be a score from 1 to 10, 10 being the best, and then an explanation for that evaluation. And then we're basically just saying that the pitch that we're giving it is JSON.pitch. So let's just go ahead and execute previous nodes so that we can actually link up that JSON.pitch. So there we go. JSON.pitch now shows up and is feeding into it. So if you look at the result, this is what we're giving it for each pitch. So this is just NVIDIA. It's going to feed through each one and give it the pitch. Now, the last thing that we'll do is we'll want to unclick simplify output at the bottom. Now, I might change this title to OpenAI stock pitch evaluation at the top, and we should be good to go. Now, I might just run this analysis and see what happens. Okay, so as you can see, we've looped through this twice. Now, the output should have everything that we wanted, but actually looking at it is that what it's doing is that it's putting all of that output into this content, right? So we have the company name, we have the evaluation explanation. all of it is grouped together. So we'll want to do something about that. Moving forward, we're going to add a wait step as well, just thinking long term if we have lots of stock pitches going through this. So I'm just going to make this 3 seconds right here. And then now let's address that issue that we had with everything being grouped together. So once again, we're going to add a code step because we want to separate that out into individual items that we can append to a Google Sheet. So we'll add a code step that will run once for all items. It's JavaScript. We'll go full screen here. We'll replace this code with this code. And this looks like a lot, but we'll break it down together. If you're ever stuck with these code steps, you can always ask ChatGPT for help and ask ChatGPT to generate code for you. Just tell it exactly what you're trying to achieve. So what it's doing at the top is grabbing that OpenAI output through content. It's also trimming it and getting rid of any extra spaces or new lines. And then it's parsing that response into individual items. So it's going to remove leading and trailing code block if present, and it's parsing that JSON object into individual items. And then the last step is really it's injecting and truncating the original pitch to 5,000 characters. So it's actually going back and grabbing that original pitch, that full pitch of each individual stock pitch that came from the prior code node, and it's truncating that to 5,000 characters because that is the limit for a cell in Google Sheets is 5,000 characters. And then at the very bottom is really just an error debugging message in case there is no output or the parsing fails. So what we'll do is we'll go ahead and execute prior nodes. And now let's execute this step. Now we should have separate JSON output for each thing that we wanted. So we have the company name, the ticker, the summary, the evaluation explained, and at the very bottom, we will have the full text. Now that all looks great. Let's just make sure to rename everything so that we have good hygiene. Now the last step is that we will want to add this output to a Google Sheets. So we're going to add a Google Sheet node, a append row in sheet node. And now what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to set up our Google Sheet credential. So we're going to click create new credential and we can sign in with Google right here. Make sure to sign in with the same Google account that you've been using. Go ahead and select all, click continue. Connection is successful and we should be good to go. And just make sure to, again, save this credential as something that you can remember. So now that our credential is set up, we will want to create this Google Sheet. So I have a sheet already created and ready to go. I've called it Stock Pitches Demo, and it has everything that we want. So it has the company name, the ticker, the full text, brief summary, total score, and total evaluation. So what we're going to do now is we're going to map each one of those items to the sheet and append a new row for each stock pitch. So what we'll have to do is we'll have to choose the document that we want to go for. So I'm just going to look up our document. So remember, it's Stock Pitches Demo. That's our document that we're using. And then from list, we should just be able to choose sheet 1. Now, this is where things get a little bit complicated, is that we're going to map each column manually. It's actually not that complicated. We're going to just drag the output from our code file to each one of these columns. So company name to company name, ticker to ticker, the summary is going to be brief summary, the evaluation is going to go to total score, and then evaluation explanation is going to go to the total evaluation. And then at the very bottom, we should have the full text. And now we should be good to go. Now, if we execute the step, each one of those items should be mapped to a new row. So now that it's done that, we'll go to our stock pitches document. And what we'll see is that there is actually only one output. So you're probably asking, why is that? It should have looped through each batch and we should have 3 stock pitches, right? And my guess would be in our code step, we have this mode set to run once for all items. So let's go ahead and change that to run once for each item. That way it'll run that code step for each item and not just once for all the items that come before it. So now what I'm going to do is we're going to go back and go ahead and clear this. And we'll run this from the very beginning just to see how it flows through. So it's downloading the file. So it's flowing through. Now it's doing the OpenAI step. And you can see that the loop over items created 2 batches. And then now that it's done these 2 items, it added 2 rows to the Google Sheet. It's going through the second batch, which should just be 1 stock pitch. And now it's adding that final stock pitch to the sheet. And now that it's gone through both batches, the operation is done. right? So now let's head back to our stock pitch demo, and we should have each stock pitch added to a row. And this is the final output from our automation, right? So we have the company name correctly mapped. We have the ticker correctly mapped. We have the full text of the stock pitch in there. So if you wanted to read the full text, you can easily just read it here. And then we have a brief summary. So if you don't want to read the full text and you just want a brief summary to get the gist of what's going on, here's that brief summary. You have the total score from OpenAI's GPT-4 Turbo model, so 7.5 for NVIDIA. And then you have the total evaluation. So just the explanation behind that total score for each stock, right? So we have 7.5 score for NVIDIA, 8 for Apple, and 7.5 for Microsoft. So that's what it looks like in completion. I hope you guys enjoyed this one and see the value that this could create for anyone that likes to read stock pitches or about different types of companies. And hopefully this just demonstrates the value of AI automation and how you can separate individual topics within a broader document and perform AI analysis on each item. So if you want to learn more about building an n8n and about AI in general, then make sure to stay tuned for more.